Hi, I'm Tate. I work as a transcriptionist, a contract transcriptionist for blind students here in Canada.
Oh, lovely. So I'm in Milton Keynes in the United Kingdom. I'm retired. I used to work at the Open University, but not as a teacher, rather as an expert at LaTeX. Nelson's in Salt Lake City. He's a stalwart of the tech community. He's been to practically every meeting ever. And he maintains bibliographies and builds systems. And he's a mathematician. He teaches mathematics at Utah. Philip is left the world of finance to return to his love of astrophysics. Is that about right?
Yes.
And lives in Frankfurt, but you were born in England, weren't you? Did you say?
I'm originally from the States, but I've lived most of my life in Germany.
Ah, sorry, I got that wrong.
But I worked in for a while.
And Kelly is in Washington State, Kelly? And she like Philip deals with stocks, except she deals with fish stocks for the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration. So she's a wildlife person. Hi, Kelly.
Hi. Yeah, I live in Washington State, and I'm on my phone today outside because we got a new puppy and he's super active. So I haven't had my video off most of the time, but I am here.
Lovely. And I've forgotten what William, Paolo is from Brazil. Is it Rio, or am I guessing?
Actually, I'm in the countryside area of São Paulo.
São Paulo. Okay. And I recognize the musical instruments from last time. If you, William, would you like to just tell Tate and Paolo who you are?
I'm an 82-year-old retired programmer. I live in Bloomington, Minnesota, suburb of Minneapolis.
Excellent. So, sorry, I'm hoping that everybody here has got some small willingness to make a difference to the beginner's experience. And I know that I tend to start with a project to make it bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until it gets too big. And perhaps you have that experience too, that, Don Knuth had that, I'll take a few months or a year out to write a typesetting system. Anyway, it was a big thing. It took him a lot longer than he thought he did. I'm really glad he did it. And in some sense, I'm really glad that he underestimated the difficulty of doing it, because perhaps you wouldn't have started. But I'm getting a sense that, how do you say? Well, actually, I heard about it on the news today, which was somebody was talking about President Biden's infrastructure bill. And he was talking about Biden wants to put money into the physical infrastructure, that's railways and bridges and all sorts of things like that, and into the digital infrastructure and also into the social infrastructure. Now, the tech community has a sort of digital infrastructure, part of which is documentation and stuff like that. And my starting point for this is, can't we make the beginner experience better? Not by doing something big, but by doing small. What small thing can we do to improve the beginner's experience? And there's something called search engine optimization, which at its best is something well worth doing. It's putting metadata into your web pages. It's realizing it's not just human beings that read your web pages, but it's also search engines and ranking algorithms. At its worst, it's people putting spam links onto your wiki, which I've had when I ran a wiki. But I sort of identified a 3-month program with 4 steps. The 4 steps are: identify pages that beginners often visit. So one of the obvious pages is type LaTeX help into Google and see what you get. That's a very well visited page by beginners. Another one would be the help pages from the LaTeX 3 project. Any page that comes at the top of Google search for LaTeX help comes to the top. So the second thing is improve those pages. So not reinvent the wheel, but just make what we've got already work a bit better. There's another one, identify good pages for beginners. So these are the pages that people may not know about, but they ought to know about. And add useful links that point to those pages. So there's two sorts of pages, the pages that people visit and the pages that are useful. And in some sense, we want to increase the harmony between the two. So that's just an approach I had that is a question of persuading a few people to change their pages to make them work a bit better or make it easier for them to provide that information. And because I met online somebody who's a logician, and because I already know the page, LaTeX for Logicians. It's a bit obscure unless you're a logician, in which case it's really relevant. And helping logicians find that page, LaTeX for Logicians, is really important. So my example is, well, maybe the latexproject.org can link to that. Another group of big pages are Overleaf. A lot of people go to Overleaf Health, perhaps because they're already in Overleaf. So improving those pages, perhaps by providing links outside Overleaf, would help the community. I saw, and I think it was something like the American Physical Society, but it was something else, where they had a high-ranked LaTeX help page, and it was really pretty basic about these are special characters that you must be careful about when you put in the abstract. And trying to sort of deal with those pages, we don't have to produce a wonderful help system that everybody goes to because it's so wonderful. We can take the existing help system and just make it incrementally a bit bigger, better. I suspect that some books are, so to speak, born wonderful. Dirac's Quantum Mechanics, I think, was probably born wonderful, and there are other things in science and perhaps other books as well that are born wonderful. And Mozart was very good at producing wonderful music off the cuff. And then there are other books like, well, I'm thinking of the Bible, which sort of go through many, many editions, and reference works go through many, many editions before they get to be pretty good. The first version of the Encyclopedia Britannica, which by the end of 1900 was about 40 volumes, is pretty impressive. But as I recall, it might be a folk story. The first edition of the Encyclopedia Britannica had something like A to D, and then they realized they didn't have enough time and money to do the rest, so the rest was D to Z. So that's my thought. But the key thing for me is actually starting some small maintainable projects. And the maintainability is quite interesting because the UK Tech Users Group, sadly, is approaching its moment of dissolution because it's, so to speak, unmaintainable. There are other reasons as well, but reducing the overheads is really important. And Google are very, very clever at that. Every time you type something into Google, they get tiny, 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 tiny little bit of benefit from it. Every time you type something into Google. Every time you click on a link in Google search, they get a tiny, tiny, tiny little bit of benefit. Costs you nothing, costs them really very little, and all these tiny little bits add up. So just sort of a lot of the internet now, I think, is like that. Don't send an email, go to Stack Exchange. And the thing that you would have asked by email is now in a much better framework, if you like. It's called, hang on. Author supply content. No, it was a new wave in the web, and I can't remember what it was called. But the idea that websites where the users supply the content, such as YouTube is a website where the users supply the content. So that's a bit of a rough waffle of what my ideas are on this. And I've done not much more than repeat the invitation email that you probably all read very carefully before you came in. So I'll stop now, and anybody that wants to speak is very warmly welcome to speak.